Welcome to the Business of Hearing podcast, the number one marketing and practice growth podcast for high-performing private practice hearing care leaders. It's Friday, and this is my end-of-week roundup of what's top of mind after 7 days of helping some of the world's best private practices to attract high-quality patients, fight the evil forces of manufacturer-owned chains, and be impossible to compete with. My name's Ollie Luke. Pull up a chair, pour yourself a drink, and let's have a chat. All right, so it's Friday, the 17th of January as I'm recording this, and as of news yesterday, it looks like the Department of Health and Social Care is set to propose some over-the-counter type Hearing Act rules in the UK. So I thought I'd record a few thoughts around this, what we can learn from the US market that did this in 2022, and for the UK listeners, this is very, very much for you. So I will apologise in advance. If you're not in the UK, then this probably won't be as relevant, but I am talking about OTC. I'm going to be talking about Apple because they're probably the weight behind this decision being made or being proposed. So there'll be some value there, whether Australia, the US, Canada, and even the fact the UK are doing it. I think the timeline is getting closer and closer for something in Canada to occur also. So let's back up, right? This has been proposed. It's now going to go under review. The UK believe they should take some of the case studies from the US of this over-the-counter act where somebody could order hearing aids online and be able to conduct some form of self-assessment and then prescribe these very basic hearing technology for a mild to moderate hearing loss without seeing a professional, without having a professional hearing eval, or similarly walk into a pharmacy and be able to buy these things over the counter. Like, that is what is being proposed, and it's under review. And I would expect that review to probably be green lighted and this to happen. So let's just back up and look at this over-the-counter thing, because if you're in the UK right now, you may be watching this and thinking, like, what's this going to change? What is it going to mean? How is it going to change the expectations of patients? What do I need to start doing right now? And I'll back up slightly, because back in 2022, this happened in the US. Trump signed the Over-the-Counter Act, I think it was November 2022, so just over 2 and a little bit years ago, and straight away, Sony launched a product, Jabra launched a product. There was a lot of products hitting stores and hitting the market that were over-the-counter hearing aids, and the mainstream media went crazy. So pretty much every core news platform shared how over-the-counter hearing aids are finally here. You now no longer need to see someone to get hearing aids, and even some of the headlines were so confusing and created so much confusion. It was, cheap hearing aids are finally here. It was almost positioning that the provider, the expert, the audiologist, the hearing aid dispenser is the person that's making the cost of these go significantly up. And it's like, good news, you no longer need them who charge all the money. You now get direct access to the product without all the margin that they're clearly making. It was just created this really confusing undertone to everything. And as a result, there was a big wave of people going to buy these OTC devices. Now, we're probably going to see something similar in the UK market. The one thing that I'll warn you on that I think is different now to 2022 is back then, there was so much anticipation for what was going to happen, what this would mean, how it would change the industry. And we were expecting this big tidal wave to almost come and hit us directly. And what happened was, as the wave started getting closer and closer to shore, it kind of minimized and ended up just being a slightly subtle wave that brushed by our ankles. It was a lot less significant than many of us were expecting. The big challenge that it caused, and this is a heads up to you if you're in the UK, is it just caused a significant amount of confusion. Because imagine all your patients now picking up a tabloid newspaper or going to the BBC News homepage, and the main headline is how cheap hearing aids are finally here. Like, it causes confusion for existing patients. It causes delay and procrastination for the people that were on the path to achieving better hearing and becoming hearing aid wearers. And it just made the market very, very funky for a short period of time until people realized that OTC devices and all that and a normality was somewhat resumed. So that's one of the big things, just to warn you about, that happened when this happened in the US, that will likely happen in the UK. There has been a big change in this over-the-counter market, which I think is difficult to ignore, and that is back in 2022, there were all these big brands, whether a Jabra, whether Sony, whether Bose, launching an over-the-counter hearing aid. Typically, they costed $800 to $1,200. They looked like hearing aids, like ugly hearing aids, like old clunky. The design was really unattractive. And it was unsurprising that they didn't work half as well as people wanted. They cost way more than most people wanted. And it resulted in a bit of a damp squid in terms of those launches. What has happened pretty significantly since is there's only one brand that's going to win this OTC market, and that's Apple, right? They launched the hearing health features as part of their iOS 18 update in late October, early November, I think it was 2024, which was available in the US, available in Australia, not available in Canada, not available in the UK, and then available in a smatter of other countries. And it got a lot of media attention. And you've seen Apple, they launched their commercial around this. It went to 50 million views on YouTube. It kind of broke the internet from a hearing aid perspective. We've seen more traffic of people searching hearing aid in 72 hours than we'd seen in the previous 72 days. And it created a 20-year spike for hearing aid related traffic. And Apple are only just getting going. And based on the trends, if you follow it back, the first AirPod Pros, the one, were launched in 2019. The AirPod Pros 2 were launched in 2022, a 3-year difference. And now in 2025, the rumors are beginning that the AirPods Pro 3 will be launched. The big interesting thing with Apple is they always launch the software first and then complement it with the firmware, the hardware, the actual technology that you buy. And they rolled out this hearing health features as part of this iOS update for technology that they'd previously launched 2 years ago. So these new AirPods Pros 3, you can pretty much expect that the hardware is going to be built to complement the software. So expect longer lasting batteries, expect a different design, expect extra comfort, all the things that would allow these to be maximized as the OTC, over-the-counter hearing technology that they claim to be. And if we look at what's going on in the UK market right now, it's pretty obvious that the pressure of Apple, whether that's consumer demand, why do we not get this, but other countries get this, or whether it is Apple themselves, one of the most powerful brands in the world who spend $30 billion a year just on research and development, like when they want to make something work in a market, I imagine conversations had and legislation can be altered. And it sounds like that is one of the big driving forces behind it. So if you've got a UK practice right now and you're like, okay, if this launches, what's it going to mean? Here's what I would timeline and what I would be doing right now. So first of all, the AirPods Pro 2 that are currently on the market, that would get access to these hearing health features. And then when the AirPod Pro 3 launch at some point in 2025, expect Apple's core advertising message around this new technology to be focused on these hearing health features headlines. I sincerely believe that is going to be the hook that they lead with. In the same way that the AirPod Pro 2, the big hook was the advancements in noise cancellation, and the AirPod Pro 2s are phenomenal at that. I do believe the big headline over the AirPod Pros 3 will be these hearing health features. So expect that. We're going to have this big wave of this coming and hitting the UK with very, very aggressive advertising messages, and expect it to be on the front page of every tabloid newspaper, top of every media website. Like this is going to go quite big. In terms of where I'd be in your shoes right now and what we've addressed with many of the practices in the US we work with, is your role is twofold. You need to educate and you need to maximize a news jacket. Now, I'll just break these down. In terms of education right now, your job needs to be educating your patients and any significant person that has influence on your practice. So let's say go to your patients and say, hey, just to let you know, this was released recently and you may have to get the timeline right on this. But hey, you may have seen this in the news, or this is planning to be released on insert date. There's probably going to be a lot of confusion about what this is, what it means, and people may be asking you questions and what your thoughts are. Let me explain what this actually means, because our fear is some of the mainstream media may confuse it or oversimplify it to a point that it lacks the important context that it needs. Here's what it means, explanation. These are readers in the glasses market. These are for people to get a basic amplification. This is not for what you need, Mr. or Mrs. Patient. And I encourage you that when you're asked about this, you help set the narrative straight and minimize the confusion. Like, if you can wrap your arms around patients and educate them, then that's a beautiful place to be and a very, very important place to be. The second thing is the newsjack opportunity. Because what are we going to see? We're going to see more people looking online for information around what these hearing health features mean from Apple, what's the difference between these and prescription hearing aid technology. Be the influencer, be the thought leader, educate your community, educate anybody that will listen, whether that's local doctors, whether that is your local retirement care home, whatever that may be. Like, educate, because when this is mainstream media news and people are Googling, people are asking, people are talking about it at the pub, like, have the words that you've put into that echo chamber be super, super loud so people are educated with you being the thought leader and people feeling like the smartest person in the room because you've educated them on what this is and what it's not, and they're not relying on a headline published by The Sun in order to pull their truths. Instead, you are the thought leader on that. So I suppose final message on this, if you're in the UK and you're like, what is this going to mean? Don't stress as much as you believe you could about the market. We've seen this happen in the US and it wasn't half as significant as many expected, but be prepared. And your job is educate, and leverage this. If you can be the first to market, to talk about it, to explain it in order to have an opinion on it, you'll likely win the Google search, you'll likely win the local authority on it, and you'll likely be the continued name on the tip of people's tongues when hearing loss, hearing aids, and hearing care comes up in conversation. But appreciate your ears. A little bit of a fast response episode to news that broke less than 18 hours ago. And I hope this is of help. And there we have it. Another episode has come to an end. And I have a quick favour to ask. If you have found this helpful, then who do you know who should listen to this podcast? I strongly believe a rising tide lifts all boats, and right now, private practice needs to stick together to fight these big, gormless groups and these manufacturer-owned Goliaths that are looking to take market share from us. Consider who should be listening, pass on the word about the Business of Hearing podcast, and I'll see you again next week.